of time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
We've nicked a big old-fashioned telly from a museum like naughty looters, so we're going to watch some really good historical content on it. What could possibly go wrong? I'm Iain.
And I'm Mark, and welcome to All of Time and Space, or as all the cool kids are calling it...
Aotas.
Aotas! Oh, this was a really fun episode to record, do you remember?
This was so much fun. I mean... Just the mind probe that went on for about 3 hours. That was excellent value. I hope you haven't edited it down.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, we had Nathan Bottomley along from Flight Through Entirety, and he was a great guest, really good fun. And we've also had some audio feedback from our friend Ben Schneider down in Indiana.
Do you know, I think his bits are the best bit in the whole show.
They really are. They really are.
We must never tell him that, though.
No. Maybe I'll just start releasing the podcast as just Ben's bits and just edit out all the rest.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I could maybe have next Tuesday afternoon off.
So let's get up to speed with where we are in the story. Through a space-time visualizer, the Doctor and his companions are horrified to see an execution squad of Daleks about to leave Skaro on a mission to find the TARDIS and exterminate the time travellers. Eluding the Daleks on the barren planet Iridius, the Doctor and his friends escape in the TARDIS. But this is only the beginning of an epic journey. As they travel through space and time, they try to shake off their pursuers by making a series of random landings. But the Daleks don't give up easily. This is a chase to the death.
Vicky. Vicky, are you all right? Yes. Yes, thanks. How about the others? Oh, they're fine. Hey, Vicky, remember the doctor's device? Well, it worked. The city's on fire. Look, you can see.
My child, are you all right?
Yes, thanks.
Come along, let's get back to the TARDIS.
Well, what about Stephen? Where is he? Stephen went back to the city.
We don't know, my child. And his chances of survival in this furnace are actually...
Quick! Well, that cable's on fire and the whole building's collapsing.
And welcome back. And if you listen very closely, you'll be able to hear mine and Ian's little fanboy heart squeeing because we've got a special guest today. It's Mr. Nathan Bottomley from Flight Through Entirety.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Yeah, no, extremely well.
Good.
Very happy to be here.
That won't last.
No, I don't think it'll last the quiz, to be honest.
So, yes, before we get to the matter in hand, there is the small matter of...
The little matter of the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
Fantastic.
Oh, what a pro.
It's like Paul Jericho's in the room, isn't it?
No, it's way better than Paul Jericho.
It's like then Jericho are in the room.
Oh, blimey.
That's a
deep cut.
So we've really blown the budget for this week's Mind Probe. We'll be using the board game of the ITV quiz show, The Chase.
Oh, see what you did there.
Do you see what I've done there? So, Nathan, it's very simple. Satisfy the mind probe. and you will be returned at the end of the show to your customary time and place. But if you fail the challenge, Castellan Cockram here is going to toss you into the time lash.
Quite vigorously.
Quite
Really? I do have a terrible fear of tinsel, so that could be terrible.
Yeah.
Right, get the tinsel warmed up, Mark. Now, Nathan, are you in any way familiar with the ITV quiz show called The Chase?
Well, funny you should say that, but we see Bradley Walsh's episodes on telly at about 3 p.m, and then we have our very own version of it with Andrew O'Keefe, the nephew of famous Australian singer Johnny O'Keefe. So I'm terribly familiar. We even have some of the same chasers on it.
This is amazing. So you're actually going to understand vaguely what's going on.
Vaguely.
I've got the board game here. You're going to be this little red gentleman.
Okay.
And we're going. Well, first of all, let me put you on the board. Do you want an easy challenge? Do you want to go standard, or do you want to go hard?
Well, I would. It's very tempting. The hard is very tempting, but I do need to join my teammates back at the desk, so I'm going to go for the standard challenge.
Okay, you're going to be up against the Beast.
No, we have him. We have the Beast.
He is poised 3 places behind you. Are you ready for your first question?
I am ready.
Good. Right. Okay. Question 1. Who wrote the novel Midnight's Children?
Salman Rushdie.
Oh, straight in there, didn't he?
Wow,
Sorry.
straight in.
It's a multiple choice question, isn't it?
You are correct. I'm going to move your piece forward 1 space. You'll be very pleased to know the Beast got it wrong.
Really?
Oh.
The Fool thought it was Stephen King, apparently. So that's
out
good.
of character.
Okay, question 2. This is going very well. The term silver service is most often used in which industry? A, retail, B, travel, or C, catering?
I'm going to say catering, Ian.
You are entirely accurate, and I can't believe this. The Beast got that one wrong as well.
Wow, he's having a terrible day.
He really is.
He really is.
Question.
Are you starting to wish you'd gone hard now? So
I'm
to speak.
always hearing that.
Question 3. The first British citizenship ceremony was held in what year? Was it A, 1984, B, 1994, or C, 2004?
I didn't know you were citizens. Are you citizens? I thought you were subjects. I thought you were vassals.
I've got no idea what this is about.
Yeah.
I've never had a citizenship ceremony.
No. Well, I'm going to go with 1994.
Oh.
Oh.
I'm afraid it was 2004.
Goodness.
And the Beast got that one right, so he takes his first little step onto the... He's never going to catch you, don't worry.
No.
Question 4. You'll like this one. Question 4. In Doctor Who, Tom Baker's Doctor had a liking for which sweet? Now I'll give you the answers.
I do need the A, B, and C.
Yeah. Is it A, licorice all sorts? Is it B, jelly babies? Or is it C, pear drops?
Oh, I think I'm going to go for B.
You're going to go B. That's an amazing save. You are correct. The Beast was correct. There are 4 spaces between you. It's looking pretty good. I love the idea of Tom Baker going for something as exciting as a pear drop.
Do you know, I have literally no idea what a pear drop is.
They're horrible.
It's like a boiled sweet. There's not much flavour to them. They're quite dull.
Does your sort of grandma have a tin of them on the sideboard?
It's
Too dull for grandmas even.
Sweet from a bygone and somewhat sadder era.
Yeah.
Where joy was not at a premium. Question 5, if you will. Which of these ITV dramas premiered first? Now, this is where it gets a bit kind of British-centric. Was it A, Cracker? Was it B, Inspector Morse? Or was it C, Poirot?
Ooh. My best friend is a massive Poirot fan and just watches it all the time. He was hugely excited that David Fing was going to be in Doctor Who until he saw the episode.
Yeah, weren't we all?
I'm going to say Cracker.
Okay, I'm afraid it was not Cracker.
Oh.
It was
Inspector
Force. Yeah.
Come
on, Lewis. Now the Beast got that one right. He's now 3 spaces behind you. You are 2 away from home. It's going on a bit, but I'll speed up and we'll get there. Which of these duos created Broadway musicals? Was it A, Marx and Gran? Was it B, Carey and Croft? Or was it C, Rogers and Hart?
I'm going to go for C.
Oh, correct. And the Beast gets it right as well, so I'm going to move his little piece down. Oh, God, I wish you guys could see this. It's very exciting.
This is great radio.
It really is. Now then, this could be your last question if you get it right. Question number, whatever it is, number 7. I don't know. A scuttlebutt is a cask aboard a ship used to store what? Is it A, rum? Is it B, milk? Or is it C, water?
I'm going to go for.
Oh, he's uncertain.
Something means sinking it, doesn't it? And the butt must mean the barrel. I'm still going to go for rum. It's one of my 3 favourite things about piracy. Am I wrong?
What are you? You are wrong, but I'm very interested to hear what your other 2 favourite things are about piracy.
Well, sodomy and the lash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe a nice jaunty cutlass and one of those tricorn hats.
Or Hugh Bonneville, perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, next question. In English, the Italian cookery term al dente means what? Is it A, to the taste, B, to the tongue, or C, to the tooth?
Oh, well, my 520-day Duolingo Italian streak leads me to the conclusion that it's to the teeth.
Fantastic! You have won. You have beaten the taster. You are home and dry. You've won £40,000 for the team, ladies and gentlemen.
Congratulations! Well done.
Fantastic. And then, of course, we all lose it in the final round. It really is one of the most ungenerous game shows that you could possibly imagine. Mostly, you win nothing.
What I like is they finish the show. They say, right, we've got to take the £24,000 back. You leave with nothing. Have you had a nice day? And they always say, oh yes, the sandwiches were lovely.
Yeah, no, there's no sort of diamond-studded stick pin from Bruce and Walsh or anything. It's super miserable.
No, blankety blank checkbook and pen. Very poor.
Anyway, fantastic. That was huge fun. I might do this in future, even though we won't always be doing the chase, so that doesn't really work. But
well, we can save it for when we get to Jodie's Doctor, can't we?
Oh, good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will we still be recording these then, Mark, or will we?
Well, I mean, we'll both be in our 70s by that point, but you know, hope springs eternal.
On the subject,
well, thank you for humouring us there, Nathan.
No, that was terribly good fun. I'm a huge fan. I actually spent quite a lot of time on YouTube videos of Bradley Walsh kind of, they make up quiz questions for him that are full of sort of ridiculous innuendos, and he just sort of falls apart laughing, and it's terribly sweet to watch.
Oh God, there was did you see the one where it was it was about the German Olympics, and it was what did Fanny Schmeller win an award?
And I think it was the first one. And he just couldn't hold it together. He is so funny. He's so very sweet. And we own him.
We do. He's one of us.
Yes. Excellent. Right, anyway, I suppose we all really ought to get around to talking about the chase. Nathan, lay your cards on the table. Are you a fan of the chase? Would that be fair to say?
I am. I do really enjoy the chase. It's one of the Hartnell stories that I go back and watch again and again. We've named 2 podcasts after episode titles, Flight Through Entirety and Jodie into Terror.
Jodie into Terror.
both named after sort of fairly terrible episodes, to be honest. But I do have to say that watching it again in preparation for this, I was kind of acutely aware of how terrible it is. So I haven't stopped loving it, but it's terrible in a whole heap of ways.
So what was your first experience of watching this one?
I think it was... Oh, yes, I know. Do you remember the box set, the video box set with the chase and Remembrance of the Daleks and the little booklet?
Was that the Dalek tin?
Yeah, it sort of came out with the tin, sort of at roughly the same time as the Trial of a Time Lord tin.
Time Lord, it was the 30th anniversary, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it was one of the very early Hartnells that I really, really got to know, and kind of what I didn't realise in context is that heaps of the ones surrounding it were just sort of vastly better. I just thought this sort of vaguely shitty kind of look of it was kind of part of...
That was as good as it got.
Yeah, that was basically what 60s Doctor Who looked like. Turns out not so much. But nevertheless, it's a little bit like Keys of Marinus. Which is like another one that I really like and will happily watch again and again, because even if the setting is a bit crap, it's over quite quickly and we're on to the next thing. And I guess, the chase has that advantage.
Well, we're big fans of Keys of Marinus here, aren't we, Ian? So, that stands us in good stead. I'm getting slightly wary looks from Ian, like he's about to drop the bombshell that it's not necessarily his favourite story. What was your first experience, Ian? I think I know what the answer is going to be, but what was your first experience?
I'm going to blow your socks off with surprise because I didn't, in fact, watch it just now. I watched it, I think, 3 or 4 days ago.
Oh, okay.
I sort of spent a morning in bed watching all of it in one go with my jaw, I would use the word agape.
Yes.
Yes.
Aghast,
agape. I can't think of any other words that start with ag. Agadoo, I suppose.
Was it the quality of the direction that leapt out at you?
There were a number of contributing factors, but we'll come to that at length.
I'm sure we'll come to
that. You don't
want
me to blow my wad straight away.
No.
Well, no.
No people wants that. Even in audio, it's horrific. So, and Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I'm sure I must have caught the odd episode on UK Gold, which was the Sky satellite channel back in the 90s. But my first enduring memory of having watched this one is I live in the same city as J.R. Southall, who we had on for our Daleks Invasion episode. And we'd known each other for donkey's years. And it was a really boring Sunday afternoon, so he said, why don't a load of you come over and we'll watch something? So there's me, there's JR, there's a couple of other guys who are big Doctor Who fans. There's my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, who, she likes Doctor Who. She's not a massive fan. She's not obsessed with it or anything. And one of the other guys' girlfriends as well, who's really just couldn't care less, to be honest. So JR, in his infinite wisdom, said, well, tell you what, we'll put this on. It's such a laugh. You'll really enjoy it. And hands down, everyone loved it. It was great. I mean, a lot of it was the element of, oh my God, this is ridiculous. This is just stupid, crazy, laughable. But it's thoroughly entertaining. I don't think you can come away from it. If you're in the right mindset, you can't come away thinking, oh, well, I'm quite disappointed with that. I don't think, anyway.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it is thoroughly enjoyable. And whether you're laughing sort of at it or merely next to it, it's really, there's a lot of fun to be had, I think.
I think so, yeah. So we start off with the old time-space visualizer. So I'm waiting for Ian to get on his high horse about Mr. Chesterton's dancing to the Beatles.
I've got to tell you, I watched it on BritBox and there was no evidence of the Beatles.
Oh,
that bit.
You've had the American experience, I believe it's called.
Well, yes, I have.
I actually suspected that they didn't have the rights to that clip. It's from Top of the Pops, isn't it, or something? And and that even the DVD wasn't meant to have it. I certainly remember, people reacting to news stories that it wasn't going to be on the DVD. But I think, they sell a few tens of thousands of the DVDs and no one really gave a shit, so it just still went through.
The UK one had it, but I seem to remember at the time the US version didn't, because of rights reasons. The original story was that they actually had asked the Beatles if they would appear in the programme, and the idea was that they were going to appear in aged makeup with grey hair, and it was supposed to be like the 50th anniversary of their first hit or something. But then the management decided that's not necessarily how we want our boys to be shown on TV, so that was soon given the kibosh, and they managed to dig out a clip from Top of the Pops instead.
Do you know what? I'm thinking about it, and I can remember some kind of old Doctor Who clip show, and I think I remember seeing the bit of Ian Chesterton dancing that we're talking about. Was he doing some sort of weird...
That's it,
behind his head?
Yes.
What the fuck was that?
I think it's something that all Ians do, isn't it, when they get on the dance floor? Yeah.
I've never done that. I'm more of a drunken giraffe.
I think it's a science teacher. Teacher dancing, I think, is what we're getting there.
Stimulating the phagocytes around his hair, causing much excitement.
Because, of course, everyone knows that Latin teachers are the best dancers.
We are incredibly... Well, Latin, it's in the name, right?
That's a good point, I hadn't thought of it.
So what do we make of the time-space visualizer? I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it's massive. It's not very practical, but, I thought it was a cool bit of... it obviously moves the plot along to a small degree.
It did.
Well, no. Or not.
Well, it kind of gets things moving, doesn't it? But it doesn't... I mean, they watch these clips, and you think, okay, well, that's interesting. I wonder if they're going to end up there. And they don't. They just... That's it. You see the clips, and then you never go back there again.
It's very, very strange, I think, because it doesn't advance the plot in any way, and it is just our characters. So we're sitting around the TV, watching TV. Watching them sitting around the TV, watching Doctor Who type things. It's really sort of fun, and it's super weird because the whole episode starts with the Daleks on Skaro, presumably, or whatever, sending the time capsule after them. So we know the Daleks are coming, but then we just get all this sort of nonsense. And in fact, one of the things that I love about the chase is, it's sort of paced fairly languidly, and nothing really matters all that much. And so there is just a lot of time for us to see this TARDIS team just sort of dicking around. There's a bit of sunbaking, there's a bit of lying on the floor, there's, sitting around watching telly and stuff like that. And I adore that. I just think it's wonderful.
I think it was a very strange sort of production idea obviously it doesn't cost too much to have the guy pretending to be Lincoln. But by the time they're doing the Shakespeare Queen Elizabeth I scene, they're building sets for that, they're costuming that, they're hiring 3 actors.
I'm sure they had all that in their props department.
Yeah,
all those fantastic.
But why are they spending money on that?
Do you think it's the educational thing, the Reithian thing? Like, here's Shakespeare and here's how the Merry Wives of Windsor came about?
That's a very good point. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I'm going to move your little counter an extra space for extreme cleverness. You get one more right, and you're off the board. You'll be moving across the table. I'll
be the new governess.
It was funny to see Hugh Walters as Shakespeare giving, I would say, much the same tone of performance he gave in Revelation of the Daleks only 80 years later. So that was interesting.
No, it's vocal. I went Runcible the Fatuous, actually, is where I was sort of thinking that went. But it's a very different different Shakespeare from Dean Lennox Kelly, isn't it?
Really
a much fair and sort of... I think that's all just terribly wonderful, though. And And I adore the fact that although Vicky has heard of the Beatles, she's never heard their music, and for her it's sort of really rather quaint and old-fashioned music because she is so incredibly cool. Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I know, I like that. That's a neat touch. We can't really escape because obviously we're going in vaguely chronological order. We're going to have to go to Iridius, aren't we? And good Lord, poor Hul Bennett. What on earth was he thinking when he took that part? I mean, I don't know if have you guys seen the DVD version? Because in the extras they talk to Richard Martin and a few of the other people involved in the making of it, and they were saying how, I think Richard Martin was saying that Terry Nation had wanted the Iridians to be really sort of grotesque and quite frightening and otherworldly, and as far as he was concerned, there was no reason for them to be that way as far as the way the plot was going. So he kind of nixed that, and I'm sure the budgetary reasons probably came into play somewhat, but I mean, goodness, those costumes were not the best. No. If I'm going to do a cosplay, it's certainly not going to be as an Iridian, that's for sure.
What was the show? I have a vague memory as a child of a British sitcom that Hul Bennett was the star of.
Shelley. Yeah.
Shelley.
I think he wrote it as well.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
I do remember that.
Yeah, no, I had seen that by the time I sort of first saw the chase. It's sort of weird, isn't it? Because, like, you think that, Richard Martin might be a director who's very good with actors, but a little bit less, sort of Alan Bromley, he's good with actors, but not very good with the technical special effects things. But, I don't know what Richard Martin is good at, because he gets such terrible performances from just about everybody.
Well, he does seem to get landed. I think JR mentioned this when we talked about the Dalek Invasion of Earth. He seems to always get landed with the really super technical episodes compared to some of the more basic historicals, which he possibly might have been better suited doing, but for reasons best known to the production team, they kept landing him with these really quite technically challenging episodes.
Well, I mean, I think the fact that he's sort of technically incompetent actually kind of works with the Web Planet. Do you know what I mean? Because that's weird looking anyway. And there are, there's an occasional sort of good shot and stuff. But, like, the performance of the Iridians isn't sort of massively different from what we'll get next year in the Dalek Master Plan, where all the aliens have just these absurd voices and just ridiculous. Eventually TV settles on aliens not sounding like the Iridians. That we decide that's a bad idea.
Whenever they spoke. And so my question is, did they act and sound worse than they looked, or vice versa? I mean, it's hard to know what the worst aspect of the Iridians truly was. Yeah, it is chicken and egg.
I mean, those crusty leotards were doing nothing to help them, were they? I mean,
not really. No. You couldn't breathe out in threads like those.
Well, I couldn't, that's for sure.
I couldn't do it up in the first place, I wouldn't worry. But yeah, it was...
Yeah, no, they're super tedious. And they're so Planet Zog, aren't they? I mean, it is really hard to muster any shits to give about their city or anything. Who cares?
And they live underground with a group of monsters that are trying to kill them.
Do you think they learned a bit of a lesson from the Slither, from Dalek's Invasion? They don't show quite so much of it?
Maybe on a production level, but on a writing level, it was exactly the same mistake as before. And if you were the Iridians, you've got these creatures, the Maya beasts, I think they were called.
That's right.
Living in your city. A, go up onto the planetary surface, and they won't get you. B, build another underground city, move into that. Problem solved. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't. The problem is they're all like, however shall we oppose the Maya beasts who have come to threaten us? I don't know. Shall we play the chase board game? I've been eaten alive. There was no real sense that they had any gumption about them, or you wonder how they survived as a species.
if anything, they seem even less inclined to get out of their situation than those poor sods in the Space Museum, because they were pretty wimpy, weren't they? But they look hardcore compared to these guys.
The black-clad waiters versus the Iridians.
Yeah.
Versus a ham sandwich. I mean, who would win that fight? I don't know.
I mean, you would have to think that you could deal with a Maya Beast by just sort of walking briskly away from them, wouldn't you?
Not even briskly, just purposefully. A casual saunter at a modicum of pace would probably save your life. You're right. So yes, I think the section on Iridius was beset, shall we say, by incompetence or an ambition that outstrips
there are technical issues a go, aren't they? Because they go to Camber Sands, I think, to film the location stuff.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And
I wondered if it was Dubai again.
And obviously, they can't really run along on their Dalek wheels on the sand. And I spotted at least 2 occasions where you see the Dalek operator physically lift the shell of the Dalek up and move it through the air. So it's, like a foot off the ground. Way before they did it in the new series. So again, it's quite ahead of its time. And we really must address the Dalek coming out of the sand. I mean, Nathan, why don't you just relay that whole scene for us?
So it's our typical sort of end of part 1 monster reveal, isn't it? And we certainly it's a reenactment essentially of what happens at the end of Dalek Invasion of Earth, only it's sand, and so the Dalek's coughing and sort of grunting as it comes up out of the sand. And I have to think that everyone involved knew that was funny. Like, I think that's meant to be funny. And there's heaps of stuff all the way through that undermines the Daleks and makes them the butt of the joke. Isn't there the one in episode 2 who's asked to calculate the time path vector thing, and he sort of goes, carry the 5. It's like, I think that the one. There's a Dalek that barks a whole series of orders, we will do this, we will go and locate them, and the other Dalek says yes, 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 yes. And at the last yes, the other Dalek just goes, well, get on with it then, like it's very, very deliberately making them funny. And in part 2, when the Dalek falls into their trap, there's this sort of hilarious comedy scene of it sort of just barreling off the cliff and sort of falling down. I don't think that the people involved would have been surprised to find us still laughing at that now. I think that's intentional.
Because, I mean, you don't get the feeling Terry Nation would have been prepared to have jokes made at the expense of his creations that soon, but everyone else involved in the production was probably quite happy to have a bit of fun with him.
I also think this is our third Dalek story, right? And we've had they're on a city on the planet Zog or whatever, and we have to escape them, and it's a, what is it? Racist metaphor or something. And then we have them invading Earth, and so it's like, what if the Nazis had won the war or whatever? And so now we're going for a different setting and a different tone, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think the problem is that it's just not directed well enough for the comedy to work properly.
It's funny, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
Yeah. But you can see that it's intended to be funny on some level.
How much do we think of this was... Because we had a conversation with JR when he was on for the Daleks Invasion. From what I gather, this was quite a late script to come into the production team. I got a feeling it was very sort of last minute. So I don't really know quite how much of this was Terry Nation and how much of it was Richard Martin and others having to put stuff together on the fly.
You have to think that a late script from Terry Nation is going to be, maybe 2 or 3 sides of an A4 page,
just some notes
per episode.
Just a drawing of a Dalek. And an invoice stapled to it. I think that's an interesting thought, because now go with me on this, fellas. This is going to sound weird, but I promise we will come good. It feels a little bit like the War Games, which was another story that was obviously written very close to the wire, and And so they had, right, we've simply got to fill the time and have all these cliffhangers and keep the story going. And because of that pressure on that occasion, they came up with an absolute stone cold masterpiece. What I've likened in the past to like a Dan Brown kind of experience where you can't stop, even though you may have your doubts about the relative merits of it, you literally can't put it down or turn it off because it's so compelling. I think with this, there are elements where the story was doing the same thing and you were pulled along by the sheer brio of the storytelling and the sheer spectacle, asterisk. But on this occasion, I think probably because they had the Daleks and they were quite hamstrung by what that left them in terms of the limitations on the production, maybe it just on this occasion didn't go quite as well as the War Games.
I think the War Games has the advantage of a kind of consistent tone, you know, and the setting is interesting. Whereas this has really kind of, you know, just a bunch of things that happen until we reach sort of episodes 4 and 5. And those things are sort of fitfully funny, like, and entertaining, and sometimes even deliberately so. But it doesn't add up to a great deal. You know, we get Iridius, which is like kind of boring, and then we get, you know, we go to a series of places the following episode where we don't meet the Daleks at all, and then we do meet the Daleks in what is a fairly ill-judged kind of adventure, and then we get to Mechanus, you know.
Yeah. So, shall we? Let's maybe move on from Iridius and talk about. I want to say episode 3, where we have the astonishing sequence up the Empire State Building, and then the Mary Celeste. So that the tour guide, he didn't really sound like he knew what the hell he was talking about. I was watching it thinking, this reminds me of Joe Pesci in Stella Street. He's like, oh yeah, if you look over there, there's a building, and if you look over there, there's what the fuck, there's a thing over, I'm going over here now, you guys. And then, thank heavens for Peter Purvis with his Southern gentleman acting.
Well, in comparison, he looked pretty good, I thought, you know.
Well, that is grading on a curve, you know, like
the bar was set fairly low, admittedly.
I like to think that the tour guide is an actor who has just merely read a verbal description of what an American accent sounds like.
Right. Or the script was written out phonetically and he's actually sort of reading it verbatim.
I mean, that's clearly all intended to be incredibly funny, and you can see Peter Purvis doing his absolute, you know, level best of trying to make the material work as comedy and kind of overplaying it a little bit.
But that's in keeping with the sort of theme of the story as things go along. You know, it's quite daft and silly and...
Yeah, and it's something that Peter Purvis is going to find himself doing over and over again, isn't it? Like he rescuing kind of ropey material. But I mean, you know, like the Americans are sort of deliberately sort of fat. There's one hilarious old woman with a bird on her head who's like struggling to get a camera strap over it. You know, like it is all kind of terribly good fun. Yeah. It's 1966 as well, so there is the famous question of why they don't just hop on a transatlantic cruise and go home.
That's a very good point. Well, I suppose, would it look a bit sort of, you know, a bit rude to say, look, sorry, Doctor, I know you're in trouble. We're off. So good luck.
You're going to die. They're going to hound you throughout the rest of eternity.
I hope the Daleks don't catch up.
We're off now. It's been lovely. See you
real. Cheers.
Yeah. And then we get the Mary Celeste, or the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, no, I always say Mary, but
I think it's become a thing, hasn't it?
I think it was just a really weird episode of Doctor Who to have like a 10-minute sketch and then another 10-minute sketch, and
only gets weirder.
Oh yeah, but it just really dragged. They were on that boat for, I think it was almost exactly 10 minutes, and I was finding parts of it were really dragging. I didn't quite know how television could do that, but
Again, you can see William Russell desperately trying to make the material funny as well, with his sort of hilarious comedy concussion acting, and all of that stuff. Did you notice? We were talking Keys of Marinus earlier, and we had sort of rapey Vasor in that, and here we have Dennis Chinnery, who is proposing to give Barbara the job of entertaining the men on the ship. It's a weird Terry Nation thing, isn't it?
It's almost like a cry for help, isn't it?
Did you hear apparently Dennis Chinnery, on the day where they had to do the scenes at the water tank where they have to jump off the ship, he'd had a very good night the night before, and he was nursing the mother of all hangovers. And apparently this was a really good cure for it, because the water was absolutely freezing cold.
Oh.
It's so weird. So one of the soldiers has a wife and child, and so we get a hilarious comedy scene of a woman holding a baby leaping to her death.
Historically accurate. I think there was a mother and child on the real Mary Celeste, but it's a bit it's full on, isn't it? It's really quite bizarre.
Because it is being played for comedy, isn't it? Like it's meant to be funny.
Surely it was. They can't have done that by accident.
And then the Dalek that just sort of wanders off the deck for no readily apparent reason.
That's my wife's favourite bit, where his head falls off.
That was so bad.
Oh dear. And then just to labour the point, we have a very, very long slow pan across the set, which ends on the sign that says Mary Celeste.
Just in case you missed
it. And then
it,
we cut back to the TARDIS, and they tell each other 5 times that it was the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, it was
very strange.
It's that sign again. Yep. Oh, it's that sign again. Oh, now we're having a slow zoom on the sign. Oh, God, we get it. We get it. Oh, God. So one of my notes I've written down is of the chase as a whole, of all 6 glorious episodes. Which episode generally do we think is actually the worst? Is it this one?
I just think the sheer weirdness of this one prevents me from... and the middle one... the 2 middle ones are both terrible. The ones that we named podcasts after are both, kind of shockingly bad. But it's such an odd thing for the show to attempt that, worst, I am there kind of shaking my head and laughing and kind of wondering what the hell they thought they were doing. They're not boring. Well, they are a bit boring, but they're baffling as well.
Baffling, yes. So that's the word.
Are we then going on to... Oh, Lordy, yeah. This... I remembered so they then arrive in this spooky castle. In a way, it starts off with quite an interesting kind of philosophical debate between the Doctor and Iain, and he's talking about, are we somewhere that exists only in the human mind? And it starts getting quite, high concept, and you start thinking, well, okay, this is going somewhere, and then it all just unravels from there, really.
I really like that, and I love the fact that as he leaves, the Doctor explains that we've spent a period in a region of the human mind, and he remains convinced that that's what's happened. And because it's really early days for Doctor Who, we don't know that that's obviously not the case. Do you know what I mean? And the human mind is, after all, pretty crap. And so we don't know, now we look back on it and go, well, he can't land in the human mind, that's nonsense. But we didn't know that then. And I do think that is kind of interesting. But
I think we're also conditioned to assume that the Doctor is always right now, because we've had all these years of, decades of watching. So we just naturally assume that he's the smartest guy in the room and he's worked it out. So it's quite amusing. Well, yeah, quite. It's quite amusing. But they sort of play it so it's very obvious. I think the production team had serious misgivings about using other people's intellectual property, to use a more modern phrase, relying on the likes of Dracula and Frankenstein. But I think it works really well. I think it's a really fun episode. It's off the wall. It's bat poop crazy, but
It's very low effort, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? In the sense that we have a Dracula and a Frankenstein and a skeleton falls out of the ceiling and
lady.
ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Rosalind de Winter, by the way. Yes. Isn't that exciting? Last scene, training the zombie. Yeah, I think just low effort. There's not a massive amount of imagination in it. And some of it is just sort of baffling. Like, I refuse to call him, Dracula. He's a Dracula, like when you're 10. So he's a Dracula, and he has, paste on teeth, and all his dialogue is being sort of piped in from somewhere else entirely.
It's very mechanical,
and
isn't it?
Yeah. He's the one who's sort of playing it as an animatronic sort of figure. He's almost giving the game away.
Yeah, and I thought that was really good. Had he been more interactive, I think that would have it would have fallen apart very quickly. But because he was just repeating the line, "I am Count Dracula," I think that really worked, and I think that kind of gave you gave the kids watching at the time the kind of comfort of, this isn't real, no one's really in danger from a vampire, but something really weird's going on, which did add more of a there's so much about the story which is weird, in good ways and bad ways, but I think that unearthly, eerie kind of quality really gave that a boost. However, my favourite part of that episode was where they basically walk out of the TARDIS and Ian Chesterton comes out with the line, "This would be a good place to fight the Daleks. Stout walls." Because if there's one thing you're looking for in a potential battleground with the dread creatures of Skaro, it's really good.
He's obviously
masonry.
had a premonition of Tom Baker, where they smash through the walls in it's not Genesis, is it? It's the other one.
Destiny.
Yeah.
No, it could be that. I mean, you'd think somewhere with lots of traps in the ground or lots of stairs, but no, he's thinking, oh, good solid walls. Yeah, we can do something with this. Yeah, bless him.
To be fair, he does mention the stairs.
He does
mention them as another selling point.
Get around to mentioning and some stairs.
Ian is very loath to give Ian Chesterton any kind of credit whatsoever, as you will find out if you listen to any.
I've got 2 sides of A4 on Ian Chesterton, and this. Do you want it now or do you want it later?
Come on, this is his swan song, Ian. Just give him a chance, please.
Well, I gave him a chance right up until what he was wearing in the first 2 parts, because that shirt was not good. Then he changes into this kind of all cream polo neck and trousers ensemble, which looked revolting. Then he said it certainly stimulates the phagocytes. Then he said the thing about the good place to fight the Daleks because of the stout walls. He just at every point. He reached peak annoying git in this story. And, I thought I was softening towards him and I thought he was mellowing as well. But this for me, I'd slap him. I'd have just slapped him.
I would give him some extra points for referring to Barbara's episode 3 outfit as her battle dress.
Yes.
She comes out in that lovely sort of the jumper. After did we notice that that it's her second cardigan in 2 stories that's been destroyed?
There was a sort of general
she even says,
BBC
"Oh no, not
war
again."
on knitwear in the mid-60s.
Oh, I know we're going back a bit, but I did love that scene where she's lying down sunbathing with the doctor and hears this screeching noise while the doctor's singing. She said, "Oh, what's that awful noise?" He said, "How dare you talk about my singing like that?" "Oh no, the other awful noise." It's great.
We see, I think that's genuinely properly funny. There's no way that this isn't intended to be funny. Yeah.
So kudos to Jackie Hill for that. She's great.
Oh, bless her.
Gonna miss her.
Yeah. So, I mean, the haunted house, though, is kind of terrible in the sense that the monsters appear, say a thing, and then disappear. Like, there isn't really a sort of sense of threat. No. It is just just a little bit crummy, I think. And again, it's one of those things where you can solve the problem of the monsters by just kind of walking away from them, with a little bit of energy. And yet, they seem to be sort of massively over-engineered, don't they? Because the Frankenstein's able to kind of, pick up and hurl a Dalek across the room, Yeah.
Do we really think it's within the bounds of belief that they would bugger off in the TARDIS and forget to take Vicky with them? Or am I being unnecessarily
harsh? It didn't work
harsh?
for me. I've got to agree with you. It didn't work for me for a second.
And she's smart as well. She's not some sort of dimbo who's just going to wander off. Well, I mean, fair play.
Yeah. He pulls it again, doesn't he, in Blake 7, in, is it Seek, Locate, Destroy, where they all get on board the Liberator and they've left Callie behind under a pile of rubble, and it's kind of like, well, they're all kind of assholes.
There is that.
They don't care about each other. But, Terry sort of pulls that trick again. So it is sort of...
Terry Nation reusing ideas. How very crummy. Dare you?
Yes, it's unthinkable. I think it's a little bit of a shame that they just completely diffuse the tension by having her wander into the... Like, we get to see her wander into the TARDIS capsule. Imagine if we didn't know...
The TARDIS.
And we just... if we didn't know that she'd got in there and we only discovered it at the start of episode 5, that would have been
would have been cool.
That would have been something. Yeah. But we already know she's okay.
What do we think of that dildo or TARDIS? Sorry. Because what I've written down here is that the Doctor's TARDIS is bigger on the inside. The Dalek time machine is shitter on the outside. It's very much a time machine of two halves. They spent a lot of money building the interior. And I think the exterior was made of an old toilet roll or something like that. It was awful.
It did look a bit plywoody, it has to be said.
I think it's charming the way they paint little silhouettes of themselves on everything. I think that's quite sweet.
They've got a kind of fetish for that sort of shape. Yeah. I just thought when when a production is spending money dressing 3 actors to play Queen Bess and William Shakespeare, you think, oh, there must be a bit of cash in the kitty. This is going to be quite a high-end production, but they must have spent, I would say, about $8 on.
Well, they went to the trouble of getting those couple of Daleks from the movie, didn't they? But they took the bumpers off and just had them sitting static next to the lift with the cardboard cutout Dalek on it. I mean, it's just very strange decisions there.
It was when you're, again, when you think of the war games and the rather brilliant Sidrat machines they had. This time capsule just looked so glaringly poor in what is a fairly broad sea of mediocrity. This really stood out as being quite terrible. But maybe that's...
It's not a budgetary thing, though, is it? It's just a, crappy, unimaginative design thing. It's got to be a box. It doesn't really need any actual features. It can look like anything. What the hell are we going to do?
It did look like it was made out of balsa wood. And, if they just put a couple of shiny lights on it and a bit of chrome here and there, it would have looked quite special. But it was like... Oh, I can't even formulate a sentence.
I'm waiting for the Blu-ray special edition when they reimagine it as CGI and it'll be all singing, all dancing.
That would be great. That would be really good.
I would watch the shit out of a version of this with CGI.
You can have a Skype viewing party, it'd be great.
Special effects.
If you could choose, if they sort of on the DVD you have 3 or 4 different avatars for the TARDIS, and you can choose between, say, a 1974 lemon yellow Ford Cortina, a giant pineapple, or the actress Molly Ringwald, you just choose the exterior for that type. I think that would be great. But as it was, I think the biggest, shall we say, disaster of the story.
Well, yeah.
Well, what about the scenes? Where we're travelling through time and space, which we haven't mentioned, which is sort of a table with a bit of lights on it. and like some mirrors arranged in a triangle, and while another camera sort of zooms erratically next to a model of the TARDIS and a model of the Dalek.
And the little stick on the bottom of the time machine as it goes past.
And it's all superimposed using the latest modern technology.
It was sort of strange but cheap, and it was that was very lovely, but obviously very very badly done. But it felt like they were at least trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, were they? I kind of feel that, Richard Martin has a kind of that'll do spirit. Do you know what I mean? You've seen Ed Wood. Do you know what I mean?
Brexit writ large.
Like Ed Wood. I'm just expecting him to be at the end of everything. That was marvellous. That was lovely. And, like on the DVD extras, he's a sort of rather fey sort of figure with a cravat and things. And I'm sure that he's just sort of going, oh, darling, you were great. That was lovely. Thank you. He really didn't look like someone who would be sort of bold enough to say, actually, that was a bit shit. Do you think we could do that again? So I'm sure everyone had a lovely time, and people, have nice things to say about him. But it really is very much okay, that'll do.
So let's move on from the haunted house, unless anyone's got any further.
Well, obviously the big reveal. The big reveal is that there's this incredibly convincing robot duplicate of the Doctor that's been produced by the Daleks, and it's. Nathan is rolling his eyes, dear listener.
It's so unbelievable. Like, was Hartnell busy? What? Like, I just don't understand. He's not in that scene. Like, what was he doing? He was having a fag out the back,
so
and they got
annihilate or destroy and annihilate, or annihilate, destroy, whatever it is,
infiltrate
and then it
and kill
to his face right at the end. So I'm like, well, why didn't they just have him do the whole thing? But
baffling.
Yeah. It's like Richard Martin didn't realise you could have the same man do both things.
In fairness, when we get to the next episode, because there's a lot going on and they can't do many filming breaks, they have to have actors at different ends of the studio. So it would have been physically impossible for William Hartnell to run from one set to the other in order to keep that going. Or he could have, but he would have been absolutely shagged out by the end of it.
Yeah. But in this episode, that wasn't a problem that they had.
No, I know. I hold my hands up to that.
It was mind blowing.
But the lip syncing was really good.
Because
so that was,
it was I Am Count Dracula standard lip syncing. The weird thing is, in that close up, he seems to be somewhere completely different inside in the Dalek spaceship. It's absolutely incredibly jarring and super weird.
That'll do.
And you have to think that someone who really sort of gave a shit and was blocking things out would have done a better job at keeping Edmund Warwick, in the distance or with his back to us or something like that, and could have achieved a better job of it.
I'm going to put something forward here, and I'd like your thoughts on this, Nathan. Skipping forward somewhat, the final bit where Iain and Barbara are back in London was directed by Douglas Camfield. How do you think this whole story would have played out if Douglas Camfield had directed the story and they'd left Richard Martin to do the bit where they got back to Earth? Would it have been any better? Could he have done something better with it?
I do think the bit where they get back to Earth is the single most important part of the story, and so I'm kind of glad that Dougie Camfield got that. But I mean, looking at Mechanus, right? Compare Mechanus to Kemble next year. I don't want to spoil anything, but Mechanus is the studio floor. Some paintings of vines on flats, and the odd curtain. It's I've had summers like that.
You get a cream for it, though, apparently. I'm told.
It's really terrible. There's occasionally there are occasionally some very nice shots. Occasionally,
but it is an unprecedented low.
But it's very
set design, isn't it? It's the worst thing.
It's super low effort.
Not just in Doctor Who, in my life. It's the worst thing.
And then, you know, all they had to do was get some aspidistras in from the production office and sort of put them around the studio, and there you've got Campbell, and it looks amazing. You know, like it looks really incredibly good. And that's, you know, so this would have been much better, and I think that Camfield would have done the comedy better too, as well, because, you know, he's just got a better sense of what works visually and pacing and performances and everything. You know.
So, given that quite a lot of Dalek's master plan is missing, would you have preferred that Douglas Camfield had directed this one and Richard Martin had directed Dalek's master plan?
Would we still have the show, do you think? I have a massive soft spot for the Daleks master plan. I think it's really something. And it is just this. You know, it's a sort of another version of this. There's probably the same amount of script by Terry Nation, and the rest is all sort of padded out by Dennis Spooner. But it is that thing where, you know, they're just chasing the Doctor to get the Terranium core or whatever. And I think it just works a lot better, not because necessarily Terry's having a better day, but just because the production is so much better.
Did Dalek's master plan grow out of a kind of sense of, well, the chase was really good, let's do that again but bigger? Or do we think it was just a coincidence?
I'm sure I read somewhere that one of the chief executives, someone in his family, was a massive Daleks fan, so he was somewhat disappointed that the Daleks had only featured in 2 whole stories in season 2, so he decided that they'd have to go bigger and better for season 3, so he commissioned, was it 13? I suppose you'd call it 13 episodes, wouldn't you, with the cutaway as well? But so yeah, that's the story I've heard. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I mean, it is a very weird thing, isn't it? Because, you know, for us, stories are an obvious way to divide this era up, but they're not at all that for the TV audience. And so here, it's just sort of 6 weeks when Daleks are on telly and a whole bunch of crazy stuff happens. And it's almost like we have a 2-part story, then, you know, a bunch of nonsense for a couple of weeks, and then another 2-part story. And then Dalek Master Plan, I think, is magnificent. It's like 13 weeks where the Doctor is, you know, faffing about with Daleks. I think that's tremendous fun.
That's great. I'm certainly looking forward to that one, but we'll keep our powder dry on that, won't we, Ian?
Yeah, well, let's consign ourselves to the unrelenting misery that is the chase. Now, I wanted to look into the psychology of the Daleks. They have gone to quite a lot of trouble building the reproducer in order to build an android which some could argue looks in some lights a bit like the Doctor. Their plan being to split up the TARDIS crew and use the android Doctor to lead everyone astray and cause disharmony in the team. Why did no Dalek suggest instead that they just shoot the TARDIS crew with their guns that they have sticking out of their flies?
And also there's a massive problem, because obviously they've tried to do this on the cheap. So they're using version 1.0 of their software that they've downloaded into the Android. So he still thinks he's with Susan, and that's how the whole thing gets blown apart.
That's so good, isn't it? I guess, I mean, you know, they're basing... And all those 3 stories happen in chronological order, even though they don't, as far as the Daleks are concerned and the viewers at home are concerned. And I actually have to confess that I had never noticed that line of dialogue before, the Susan, because you know, it's sort of thrown away, and I'm sort of weirdly distracted by the line it's in, where it's like, you know, don't look that way, it'll be nasty, you know, like what? And I think that's actually quite good, and that's, you know, like a mention of Susan. I'm sort of happy with that.
The problem with that is, though, that because William Hartnell is prone to saying the wrong thing, most of the audience who did pick up on
just
it
write it
would have thought, oh, there he goes again, you know.
Yeah. Oh, bless.
I love how confident the script is that the 2 of them are identical. That's one of my favourite things about it. The 2 of them don't look remotely similar, but every time we mention it, they're absolutely identical. It's incredible. It's so
I suppose,
good.
you know, we've mentioned it numerous times. If you're watching it on a tiny little, you know, 4-inch TV in 1965, maybe you might just, you know, detect a slight difference between them, whereas we're watching it on our beautiful HD tellies with slightly world-weary, middle-aged eyes. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose if I'd watched this when I was, you know, 5 or 6, maybe I would have, my eyes would have glossed over that slight production.
Yeah, surprising how
foible.
How it does.
But yes, no, you're right. I should maybe rein it in a bit.
Yeah.
But, it did seem kind of weak. I've forgotten where we are in the story now. They've done.
So
the
you've got the robot doctor is trying to infiltrate the TARDIS team and bump them all off.
And there's that marvellous bit where he comes up to Barbara and says, "Barbara, my dear, Chesterton is dead." And suddenly, after sort of 5 weeks of gentle comedy, you've got this massive handbrake turn in the kind of tone. Yeah. And just for that couple of minutes, you're like, oh my God, it's a bit bleak.
The way Barbara plays that, though, I think is the right choice. Every so often, Barbara will do a scream which is kind of so realistic that you actually think, oh, this is, kind of super unpleasant and she's really suffering. When they're, in episode 6, when they're on top of the mechanoid city on the roof and she does some horrible screaming, it's just like, oh, this is too unpleasant. But she doesn't believe the robot doctor. And so she's not distressed because it just seems super mean. Why is Terry getting the doctor to say such horrible things to Barbara? What sort of monster is he? And so if she had believed him, I would have really hated that, but she doesn't. Let's go and look for him. Are you sure he's not just hurt? I've been in the show for 2 years. We never kill off the companions. He's fine. But it is. It's like a really curiously mean thing. It's like he's not infiltrating and killing. He's just kind of ruining their day in a sort of terrible way. He's just gone in there
not as a companion killer, but as a vibe killer, which is in many cases worse.
But luckily, the mechanoids step in, and what do we think of the mechanoids? I think they're kind of cute in a 1960s way.
I think they're really fun. I think they're amazing. And it's incredible that they just get one episode and we've never stopped talking about them. They never appear again. But we're kind of obsessed with them. And the way that they speak, that sort of 830 input enter thing, which just doesn't mean anything. That's super weird, and I can barely imagine Terry Nation coming up with that.
Don't know what you mean.
That scene.
If you actually separate out all their lines and input them into a BBC Model B microcomputer, it will actually come out of the Doctor Who game that you can play.
Does it draw a shape on the floor? If you draw a turtle?
With a little turtle printer, yeah. This will mean nothing to Nathan, but yeah, me and Iain and have a little trip down memory lane there.
I did wonder if it was, BASIC or whatever it was called.
Yeah, BBC
programming
Basic.
Language from the 80s.
No.
10 colour red.
No, it isn't.
They were visually arresting. The little semicircular arms were sort of laughably feeble. But yeah, they were
They're like giant novelty cigar lighters, aren't they?
Yeah, they were a brilliant, iconic thing. Thank the Lord they never came back.
I think it's a shame.
What about that scene? There's a scene which goes on for 3 minutes, it's a tenth of the episode, where two of them are just there clunking at each other and waving their little hands at each other and stuff, which I just think is delightful. I can't get over how great it is. And that city, the city, the model, it's clearly made out of just construction paper or something. And the tiny mechanoids, so again, designed by someone. They're super cute. They look nothing like the actual mechanoids, it's someone. But who cares? I think that's really fun. I think that the set is really fun. I love the way that the sort of bemused way that all the characters react to them. Stephen calls them my fat little darlings or something.
He has gone slightly tonto after 2 years of nothing but a stuffed panda for company. So,
well, men will always have urges, and if he has been isolated with them for 2 years, I'm sure he will have had recourse on occasion to enter the sphere of love. Yeah. God, what a horrible thought. Yes, but no, I think the city did look. Obviously, it was a model, but obviously, it still looked really good for what it was.
Yeah, and visually interesting.
I think the direction where it was, there was the battle and the fire and everything. It was exciting stuff. It might not have been the slickest of productions, but I think that was.
It made me think of Adam West Batman with the zaps and pals sort of superimposed.
Well,
but yeah,
we'll touch on that later on when we're wrapping up. But yeah, absolutely. And so I think within that last sort of 2-episode chunk, there was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
and you kind of wonder if Terry Nation's Dalek TV show had ever happened, would it have been sort of regularly the Daleks are fighting other mechanical aliens of
would it have been as
shape.
bat poop crazy as this?
Yeah, exactly. You'd like to think it would have been. Imagine if we'd had sort of 10 years of random Dalek robot battles. I'd have loved that. They wouldn't have needed to make Robot Wars if we'd had that.
Well, in the comics, they're the heroes, aren't they? In the 1960s comics. So,
are they? Do they go out and do good deeds and fight crime?
No, they just end up fighting lots of other species and robots, and fighting themselves as well, obviously, and infighting and
but beating themselves off.
Well, yes. Anyway, let's move on.
I have to say that I think that battle scene is magnificent and much better than it has any right to be. And I think it is because, again, it's, the happy accident of Richard Martin's general incompetence, I think, is that he just gets these sort of weird shots.
When he does something good, give him a little bit of credit.
Well, look, what are the two previous battle scenes in this story? There's the scene with the Iridians and the Maya Beast, where they're trying to drag, which is just everything happening in wide shot and a lot of people falling over, and it's just super terrible. And then the the big scene at the end of the haunted house thing, again, all shot in wide shot. God knows sort of what's happening and why we're doing anything. It's really shockingly bad. And so this one is just a big mishmash of sort of really arresting visuals. We've got a big... Where are we shooting this? You've got ramps and stuff and crane shots or something, it's technically the shots are really interesting, and he doesn't even bother to tell a narrative. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. No. It's just here's a bunch of visuals until the city blows up. I'm totally on board for it. I thought it was really good.
So the other thing I suppose to touch on now is we've picked up a new companion in the shape of Stephen, who's been hanging out for 2 years on this planet with a teddy bear of a panda, and we're fine with that.
Well, it's an interesting choice.
Don't you think he has the panda? Which I think is a super weird touch for Terry, because, those little sort of human touches aren't really his thing. But it's clearly there so that the Doctor and Vicky don't know that Stephen has survived. Right. So he runs back to get it, like Ripley running back to get the cat, for God's sake, and then we never see him again. And so it's clearly there for that reason. I have to say he's looking pretty good, Peter Purves. He's grown a little beard since episode 3.
He's keen to put it behind.
And I think he looks good.
Yeah. No, he does. And I think he's very, very straight away. He's a good fit. He is, part of the crew, and very likeable. In, I would say, stark contrast to other young male leads the show may have previously enjoyed, who've acted like a pompous.
I think what probably helped a lot was the
club.
fact that William Hartnell instantly had that rapport with him as well, which would have been massively important, particularly with his health issues as they got worse and worse as time went on.
It's super visible, isn't it? Just looking at the Doctor's reaction to meeting Stephen and how much he clearly warms to him. His eyes light up. And it's the same thing that happens with Vicky. The fact that Hartnell loves Maureen, or at least, Maureen can hold the whip and the chair, when things get kind of tense on set. It's so visible. And so, I think this is one of my favourite TARDIS teams of all time. Barbara, Iain and Vicky and the Doctor. I think they're wonderful. But I do think Stephen and Vicky together are really, really great.
Also, that's contrasted with the scene where Barbara and Iain tell the Doctor that they want to leave. And I have to be honest, I don't think there was an awful lot of acting required from Hartnell at that point. I think he was absolutely livid with them for wanting to leave the show.
Right.
Did Nation write that?
It seems unlikely. It's an unlikely human touch from a man we don't necessarily associate those qualities with. No, it did feel like, you always turn to the script editor when you've got a companion leaving or whatever. The real heavy lifting needs a lighter touch and a more holistic kind of overview. So I don't know. You feel, as Mark was saying, they could have just worked it out between the three of them on the day without it being scripted, because it was so real and it was quite powerful, and it was quite sad and
it's just so well judged. It's so well judged where you've got the Doctor and Vicky inside the machine when Barbara realises they can go home. It is Barbara, I think. And then you don't see them telling the Doctor. You see the Doctor yelling. You hear the Doctor yelling and coming out with his reaction. So we don't see that scene. And we don't see the actual goodbye scene either. And you kind of get the feeling that they would have, managed to fuck that up in some kind of spectacular way had they shown it to us. And so the really emotional beats we don't get. But what we do get is wonderful. And it's, the Doctor isn't a grown-up. Despite the fact that the Doctor's an old man, he's the crazy old man who gets them into scrapes. And Iain and Barbara are the grown-ups in the situation. And having that sort of realism where the Doctor doesn't want them to go, but he can't say that. And so he gets all angry and horrible and pushes them away because he's really upset. And that's a level of emotional complexity that you don't get in the 60s that much. And, it's not, it's not Shakespeare or anything.
That was part of
so well on screen.
But it's so good. It's so good. And having Maureen, having Vicky come up to him and having her know what's going on and having her convince him to let them go, and just the sweet way that she reassures him that she wants to stay with him, and then the slow walk away from the TARDIS, which is nearly wordless, with them with their arms around each other. It's so good.
I think you see both sides of Hartnell, because you've got the infamous Billy Fluff, the floating 2 centimeters in Spain. But then you've got that really touching. You can see he's really pulling it out of his heart, where he looks so upset, and that scene where he says, "I shall miss them, the silly old fusspots," and you just think, that really just really grabs you by the heart. It seems so sincere.
I think another really incredibly good bit of writing is that we see Barbara and Iain, arriving back on Earth. The Doctor has told them they've only got sort of 50% chance of surviving, so the Doctor and Vicky don't know whether they got back safely or not. And then we see that thing, we see the montage, it's all sort of terribly fun and silly. They're laughing to that. And then, just to tie it back to episode 1 in a way that was so unexpected, Vicky and the Doctor are watching it on the Time TV. And it's wonderful.
That's a lovely moment.
What I wondered, though, was if, say, you had some guests around for dinner, Nathan, and they were saying, "Can we borrow your car?"
I don't like where this is going.
You said, "Can we borrow your car to go home?" You say, "Sure." You've got a 1 in 2 chance of dying. Would you let them go if they've been your good friends for 2 years? Would you let them risk the journey if they had a 50% chance?
I think the Doctor's lying. Don't you think? I think the Doctor's lying to them because he doesn't want them to go.
And that they clearly didn't fall
Or he
for
just
it
really likes his new friends even more, so he's not bothered whether they die or not.
Well, this one's got a small furry panda. And as we said before, you're a big fan of that final montage of Iain and Barbara back in London,
it's lovely,
1965.
Yeah, that was such a huge thing, wasn't it? Did either of you do the whole Twitch watch-along thing? Or
I read about it on Twitter. I read lots of people, and I know how big of a deal London 1965 was.
I didn't get to watch too much of it.
I did buy the Clayton Hickman T-shirt of it. So,
he's got some amazing merchandise.
Yeah, and it's so, it is so London. It's like Trafalgar Square and a London bus and, all of these things. And Doctor Who has been so unmoored from any kind of real world thing at all. It's actually really quite striking in context. It's like the first time in Dalek Invasion of Earth where you turn up and we're outdoors, and for a prolonged period of time, you think, wow, this is something we can go outside the studio. Here, I just think we can just go to Earth in the present day. That's super exciting. And so, I actually find that I tear up in that. I'm, absolutely not ashamed to admit it. I just find the whole thing terribly, terribly sweet and sad. And I still miss Barbara. Do you know what I mean? I just kind of think, we've never had a better companion than Barbara, and I miss her terribly. I just think she's absolutely wonderful.
Jackie Hill's just been such a rock right the way through. I don't think she's really... I mean, I moaned a bit about her not wanting to tell everyone that she'd been poisoned in Planet of Giants, but, I didn't want to cause a fuss. Funny. But apart from that, I mean, she was amazing. So good.
Yeah.
It's the role that Jackie Tyler plays when the new series happens, where you have some sort of identifiable sort of mumsy figure, who is a foil to the Doctor, who grounds it in the real world a little bit. That she just reacts in a very, not like Jackie Tyler, but reacts in a very sensible way to things, and she's making a dress for Vicky in episode 1, for Christ's sake.
But she's not some sort of simpering mumsy character. She gives the Doctor both barrels in Edge of Destruction when they've been through hell.
Yeah.
Oh, and again in the Aztecs, she absolutely stands up to him, and she's right. If she stands up to the Doctor, if the Doctor and her are having an argument, she's right and the Doctor's wrong. That's just the rules of the show. I think she's, just been rarely equalled. Just wonderful. And what's sad about it is that she died so early. Which is sad in itself, obviously. But also, I always just wonder whether she realised that she'd been as wonderful as she had been. Do you know what I mean?
She could hear us now if, over the last 20 years when that era has been sort of really... It's come into focus because it's now so long ago that people can be objective about it. And, absolutely the show wouldn't have survived without her in it.
No.
I don't think. And
no.
Or Iain.
Yeah. I don't think the show would have survived without Barbara in it. And I'm really going to miss her going forwards. I think she was... perhaps the secret... weapon, the unsung heroine. I don't know. I think she was the rock that the show, because she grounded it. She sold it to the audience. She was the person that you at home are rooting for, and she's your avatar. And she was so good at that, and she was so human and so wonderful. She was such a wonderful feminist icon, and as we've said, she was right, she was powerful, she was mumsy, she could make a dress. Imagine a companion now who had that level of skill at anything. Ryan can't even ride a bike.
I'm sure Graham could do that. So, do we have anything else to say before we give this a score?
Well, I was just going to say that this story, watching them through in order, most of them for the first time, because I watched it a lot in the 80s, but I never really went back. I really got the feeling with this one that it was very much a new dawn and a new era for the show, and obviously because Verity was gone and the original companions has all
Yeah.
got. But on a,
Yeah.
you know, as we were saying with the incidental music, had a much more trippy kind of Austin Powers 60s frivolous vibe. As you were saying
Yeah.
about the Adam West Batman, it felt more campy. It felt less. Fundamentally, it just feels less po-faced than Doctor Who has ever felt. You know, previously, and suddenly it wasn't telling these fairly dull, earnest stories and being slavishly accurate as it could be with history, and it was just having fun for give or take the first time. It was just having a laugh, and this therefore to me really did seem like a massive gear shift in the evolution of the series.
I think production wise, to borrow a phrase from a Target novel, we are going to be in for a time of some considerably tumultuous buffeting.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's like a revolving door for a while. So that's going to be interesting in its own way. But we'll get to that when we come to it.
You're going to have a lot of fun with season 3. I think it's really, yeah. I love it. I think it's wonderful, but it has,
Excellent.
Nathan, did you have any sort of final thoughts on the chase before we give it a score?
No, just leave me to think of a score. I think, you know, I love it. It's fun. It's not great TV, but it's terribly enjoyable for all sorts of reasons.
No, I concur. Right, okay, I'll give Nathan a bit of a chance to think of his score out of 10. Iain, come on, let's hear what you're going to give it.
Okay, so production values were not always excellent. The story was largely made up on the back of a cigarette packet.
You are aware we've been watching Doctor Who for quite a few weeks now.
I keep coming back to these same fundamental problems.
It's not the Avengers.
Do you know what? I'm going to give this 8 out of 10. And the reason I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 is because of all the stories we've watched so far. I think this has got the most rewatch factor. It's because it is so painfully bizarre and laughably bad and poorly costumed and badly acted and shoddily built, and it's a disaster, but it's the most fun disaster I've ever seen. So for sheer lovability, it's like having an ugly cousin. I love it. It's an 8 out of 10.
Nice turn of phrase.
I say that my cousins are all stunning. So
yeah, well, I'm sure if they listen to this, they'll be incredibly thrilled. I think it's heart over head on this one because, as we've mentioned, numerous production quality issues, but I think I can forgive it just because it's so much fun. If I have a bit of a down day and I'm thinking of something that will just sort of lift my spirits, am I going to go and watch something really worthy and incredibly well produced that's, you know, not really going to do it? Or am I going to watch something that's completely mental, a whole bunch of fun, and just laugh out loud funny in ways that are meant and ways that aren't? So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
wow.
Ooh. Well, I've done, 200 and something episodes of Flight Through Entirety, and I have steadfastly refused ever to give a story a mark out of 10. And some of my co-hosts obsessed with doing this and ranking and having spreadsheets and stuff, but I've never done it, so I'm sort of tempted to give it sort of, you know, two fungoids and a stuffed panda out of 10, but instead, just, you know, given the mathematical series that we've already established here, I've got no choice, given that I agree with both of you, to give it, then I have to give it a 10 out of 10.
Good man.
Yeah.
I mean, if you feel very strongly about it, I can always bleep it out when you get to your score, so the others don't know what you've given it.
It'd just be a mystery.
We'll know.
Do you know? Yeah, do it in a foreign language. Give it D. Fox everyone.
That's great. Okay, so that's enough about what we think about the chase. Let's get some listener feedback.
I've got mail.
So yes, let's have some feedback. And we've had a ton of audio feedback from our good friend Ben Schneider down in Indiana. He had a lot to say about the chase. So let's hear what he's got to say right here.
I am completely fascinated by Steven's teddy bear. I mean, his little stuffed panda bear, Hi-Fi. Steven says that he is a space pilot and that Hi-Fi is the mascot for what is, I assume, the Space Force. But Steven didn't say that he's the commander, so out of all the other pilots in that squadron, why is Steven the only guy who gets to take that stuffed bear with him in his spaceship? Do they each get a turn to take Hi-Fi with them, and it just happened to be Steven's turn on the day that he got shot down? Or maybe Steven was actually a crappy pilot, like actually scared of flying. So did the other pilots let him take that toy with him in case he needed a little security cuddle? Maybe there really was no mascot, and Steven needed a cover story for his security panda. I mean, come on, he ran into a burning, collapsing space building to save that thing.
Thank you, Ben. And I've got a bit of feedback via Twitter. So we've got some chancer called Dr. Matt Barber, at Matt Barber UK on Twitter. He says, a letdown after the glory of the Space Museum. I feel that might be slightly tongue-in-cheek. Thank you, Matt. And we have the wonderful Jeff Goddard, a.k.a. the City of Jeff on Twitter, who can be heard on the Gallifrey's Most Wanted podcast. They say, often maligned and seen as lesser than its predecessors, but I've always loved it. I got it on VHS in the Dalek tin, so it's always felt special to me. Mechanoids, Maya Beasts, Hal Bennett, Vicky stowing away, and dim Daleks are always a joy. Animatronic Houses of Horror 2. Thank you, Jeff. And the last bit of Twitter feedback I've got is from Thomas Aaron Meehan at T19M96 on Twitter, and they say, the chase is one of my favourites. I love the planet hopping, the Daleks versus the Mechanoids was fun, and Ian and Barbara's exit was sad but became iconic because of a specific line. London 1965. Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you, Thomas. Oh, I've got one more. We have heard from Anthony Carroll at Carroll Anthony on Twitter, and they say, bit of a mess. But where else can you get a fake doctor, a Dracula, mystery of Mary Celeste solved, and mechanoid flamethrowers? Episode 1 and 6 are good. Sadly, others are, but not dull though. So thank you, Anthony. And I think Ben's got some more feedback for us, so back to you, Ben.
Why didn't the writers take advantage of the panda and Steven's relationship to it in future stories? I mean, we only see it one more time at the start of the Time Meddler, and then no more. We could have at least had scenes where the Doctor and Vicky awkwardly find Steven in a corner talking to the panda when nobody else was there looking. I mean, Steven obviously had some sort of psychological damage from spending years in prison with just a stuffed panda to talk to. This is plot gold. I mean, how many times can the Doctor use the old, oh no, I am out of mercury, we have to stay routine in order to get the plot moving? Hi-Fi was an obvious tool to get the travelers involved in a story every single week. They could have simply made Steven keep losing his stuffed toy, and he refuses to let anyone go back to the TARDIS until they venture into the Monster's Cave or the Dalek City to rescue Hi-Fi. Save the mascot, save the world!
Thanks, Ben. And Ian, who have you heard from?
We have heard from Stephen Alexander at Steel Alexander UK, who says, Doctor Who production team victorious. We can do anything. Finding that it can't. Some might think this story is a horrible screeching noise, but I reckon it can charm the birds out of the trees. A Terry Nation sketch show. That's a wonderful bit of feedback there.
Yes.
Toybox of Rassilon at TB Rassilon. So wholesome at the end, and I really enjoyed the whole thing. So great. We've heard from Simon Smith at Simon Musician on Twitter. The music, one of Dudley Simpson's earliest, always gets stuck in my brain. Lots of funny weirdness. The Beatles. A thick Dalek. We've mentioned the thick Dalek. Maya Beasts, the TARDIS. The scenes in the Mechanoid City are visually 100%. Yes, it's not very worthy, but it's charming, very 60s, and rarely dull. And finally, we've got another message from Anthony Carroll, who says, Blimey, yes. I realised I also missed Iain and Barbara's leaving montage. Great companions.
They were indeed. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And, God, we've heard from Ben again. So here's Ben.
Okay, let me tell you, I have been to Alabama a lot. His accent is fine. Now, as for the New York tour guide's voice, ugh.
Thank you, Ben. And now, Nathan, I believe you got some feedback for us.
Okay, so this is Chuck Emerson on Facebook. I believe it was the first Dalek serial from the Hartnell years I ever watched. Loved Mechanus and the Murray Celeste sequences, and it was a fun story for Barbara and Chatterton to have as their last.
Nice.
It won't be the last time we hear about Chatterton. While not my favourite of their 63 to 66 outings, that'd be their debut for the score as much as anything, I think that the humour in much of it, classical music, would make this one of the stories from the original run that I'd like to see a contemporary Who version of.
Yeah, good, nice.
So thank you for that, Chuck. Dwayne Bunny, who is he from the Sirens of Audio podcast? I think he might be.
One of your countrymen.
Yes, indeed. Here we go. Advance and attack and destroy and rejoice, sheer poetry. Yeah. And he's snuck a little reference to next week's episode in there. I have John Porter. Top stuff. Rips along at a fair pace, engaging characters, and some moments of great humour. It's a nice thing to say. We'll ignore the Carled idea of exact replica, some fine model work, and a fine exit for Mr. and Mrs. Chesterman, Chesterfield, Chesterdraws, Chatterton, Chesterton. Okay.
Very good.
And then finally, Gallifrey's Most Wanted podcast on Twitter, so Gallifrey's MW Pod. A glorious romp. I absolutely adore it. A wonderful ending to Iain and Barbara's travels. It's not afraid of comedic moments interspersed with dramatic tension. An A+ story.
Excellent.
So that's absolutely correct. That's the right answer.
I think there's a lot of love for the
Thank you very
chase.
much for that.
That's good.
That's
I'm
Ross.
Pleased to hear that.
Yeah, as there should be.
So thank you ever so much for everyone for sending in their feedback. It's great to hear some new names being read out as well. So keep it coming. And we'll list all the various ways over our end credits that you can get in touch with us. But before we go, we must firstly thank Nathan Bottomley so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been great fun. Thank you very much for having me.
The pleasure was all ours. Would you like to give a little plug to what you've got going on at the moment before you go?
So we are about to launch into the Matt Smith era with Flight Through Entirety. So in fact we're busily recording that for release a little bit later in the year, but you can find us on at flightthroughentirety.com or just basically wherever podcasts are found, and you can follow us at FTE Podcast on Twitter.
Wonderful. I don't want to make you too big-headed, but it is a must-listen podcast. I mean, I'm probably shooting ourselves in the foot here because it's, very much
it's much better
along
than
the
us,
lines
isn't it?
of
I love it.
Hoping.
And they're going to do the Matt Smith era. Oh my God.
But,
Squeeze.
But it is a fantastic podcast. The guys, the whole team are just so witty, funny, intelligent.
Erudite.
If you haven't listened before, you really should check it out.
Thank you.
Excellent. So until next time, where we'll be encountering the Time Meddler. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @TimeEndSpacePod, and you can also find us on Facebook. If you want to leave some audio feedback, there is a link in the show notes. You can use your phone or your computer and leave up to 60 seconds of feedback, or if you're listening via the Anchor website, you can click on the message button and leave your audio. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you to Momo Tempo for providing our theme music.